There's a particular kind of freedom that comes with truly loving yourself, a freedom so profound that it fundamentally alters your relationship with the world around you. It's the freedom from the tyranny of other people's opinions, from the sting of their words, from the weight of their judgments. When you possess genuine self-love, insults and attempts at humiliation don't land the way they're intended to. They bounce off an invisible shield you didn't even know you were building, one constructed from acceptance, understanding, and an unshakable sense of your own worth. Before we begin, if you enjoy this video, give me a like, comment below about your thought and hit subscribe button so you don't miss any video inspired by Yogananda's teaching. Thank you very much. Most of us spend our lives vulnerable to the opinions of others because we've outsourced our sense of value. We've handed over the keys to our self-worth and allowed other people to determine whether we're good enough, smart enough, attractive enough, successful enough. We walk through the world like exposed nerves, flinching at every critical word, every dismissive glance, every hint of disapproval. An insult from a stranger can ruin our day. A humiliating moment can haunt us for years. We replay these scenes in our minds, each repetition deepening the wound, because somewhere deep inside, we believe that these external judgments reveal some fundamental truth about who we are. But self-love changes the entire equation. When you genuinely love yourself, you become the primary authority on your own worth. You stop waiting for the world to validate you because you've already validated yourself. This doesn't mean you become arrogant or delusional, believing you're perfect or beyond improvement. It means you've developed a stable, compassionate relationship with yourself that isn't dependent on constant external approval. You know your strengths and you acknowledge your weaknesses, but neither defines your fundamental worthiness as a human being. Consider what happens when someone insults you. They might call you stupid, ugly, worthless, or any number of cruel things. If you don't love yourself, if your sense of worth is fragile and externally dependent, that insult finds fertile ground. It confirms your worst fears about yourself. It echoes the critical voice already living in your head. The insult doesn't just hurt in the moment, it becomes part of your internal narrative, another piece of evidence in the case you're building against yourself. You might spend hours, days, or even years thinking about it, letting it shape how you see yourself and how you move through the world. But when you love yourself, the dynamic is entirely different. The insult arrives, but it has nowhere to take root. You hear the words, but they don't resonate with your internal reality. If someone calls you stupid and you know, with the certainty that comes from honest self-assessment, that you're reasonably intelligent, the insult simply doesn't compute. It's like someone insisting the sky is green when you can clearly see it's blue. You might feel momentarily surprised or annoyed that someone would say such a thing, but you don't internalize it. You don't take it into your heart and let it poison your self-perception. This protection extends beyond obvious insults to the more subtle forms of humiliation we encounter. Someone might try to embarrass you in front of others, pointing out a mistake you made or highlighting something they perceive as a flaw. Without self-love, this kind of public exposure can feel devastating. You might feel your face flush, your heart race, your mind go blank with shame. The humiliation can feel so intense that you want to disappear, to undo the moment, to somehow erase yourself from the situation. You might avoid similar situations in the future, letting that one moment of embarrassment limit your life in countless ways. Self-love doesn't make you immune to embarrassment entirely. You're still human, still capable of feeling awkward or uncomfortable. But it dramatically reduces the power these moments have over you. When you love yourself, you can acknowledge a mistake without it threatening your entire sense of self. You can laugh at yourself, apologize if necessary, and move on without carrying the weight of shame. You understand that making mistakes, having flaws, and experiencing awkward moments are all part of being human. They don't diminish your worth because your worth isn't contingent on being perfect. The mechanism by which self-love provides this protection is fascinating. It creates what psychologists might call a secure internal attachment. Just as a child with secure attachment to their caregiver can explore the world confidently, knowing they have a safe base to return to, a person with self-love can navigate social situations and challenges with greater resilience. When something goes wrong or someone attacks them, they have an internal safe haven. They can retreat into their own self-compassion, their own understanding, their own acceptance. They don't need to desperately seek reassurance from others or collapse into self-hatred. They have themselves, and that's enough. This internal security also changes how you interpret other people's behavior. When you don't love yourself, you tend to take everything personally. Someone is rude to you, and you assume it's because there's something wrong with you. Someone tries to humiliate you, and you believe you deserve it. But self-love allows you to see other people's cruelty for what it often is, a reflection of their own pain, insecurity, or dysfunction. People who are genuinely content and secure in themselves rarely feel the need to tear others down. Insults and attempts at humiliation usually say far more about the person delivering them than about their target. Understanding this doesn't necessarily make cruel behavior acceptable, but it does depersonalize it. When someone insults you and you recognize that they're probably acting out of their own wounds, the insult loses much of its power. You might even feel compassion for them, recognizing the suffering that drives someone to lash out at others. This doesn't mean you have to tolerate abuse or maintain relationships with toxic people. Self-love also means setting boundaries and protecting yourself from harm. But it does mean you don't have to carry the emotional burden of other people's dysfunction. Self-love also protects you from humiliation by changing your relationship with vulnerability. Many of our most humiliating moments come from being exposed in some way, having something we wanted to hide revealed to others. Maybe it's a weakness, a failure, a secret, or simply an aspect of ourselves we're not proud of. Without self-love, we invest enormous energy in maintaining a facade, in hiding anything that might make us look bad. This makes us incredibly vulnerable to humiliation because we have so much to protect, so many secrets that could be exposed. But when you love yourself, you become more integrated. You accept all parts of yourself, even the parts you're working to improve. You don't need to maintain an exhausting pretense of perfection because you've made peace with your imperfections. This doesn't mean you share everything with everyone or that you have no sense of privacy. It means you're not living in constant fear of being found out, because there's nothing to find out. You are who you are, and you've accepted that. When someone tries to expose or embarrass you, there's less to expose because you're not hiding from yourself. The journey to self-love isn't always straightforward or easy. Many of us have spent years, even decades, learning to hate ourselves or at least to view ourselves with harsh criticism. We've internalized the judgments of parents, peers, society, and culture. We've absorbed messages about how we should look, act, achieve, and be, and we've measured ourselves against these standards and found ourselves wanting. Undoing this conditioning takes time, patience, and often considerable effort. But the process of developing self-love is itself protective. As you begin to treat yourself with more kindness and compassion, you start to notice how much of your suffering has been self-inflicted. You realize that the harshest critic in your life has often been yourself, and that external insults and humiliations have been so painful largely because they echoed your own internal voice. As you quiet that critical voice and replace it with something kinder, external criticism naturally has less impact. Self-love also gives you the strength to respond to insults and attempts at humiliation in ways that protect your dignity. When you don't love yourself, you might respond to cruelty with desperate attempts to defend yourself, with counterattacks, or with collapse into shame. None of these responses are particularly effective. Desperate self-defense often makes you look weak. Counterattacks escalate conflict and bring you down to the level of the person attacking you. Collapse into shame gives the attacker exactly what they wanted. But when you love yourself, you can respond from a place of groundedness and strength. You might choose to ignore the insult entirely, recognizing it doesn't deserve your energy. You might respond with calm assertiveness, setting a boundary without becoming defensive. You might even respond with humor, diffusing the situation without taking the bait. Whatever you choose, you're responding from a place of choice rather than reaction, from strength rather than vulnerability. There's also something to be said for how self-love changes the way others perceive and treat you. People who genuinely love themselves carry themselves differently. They have a quiet confidence that doesn't need to prove itself. They're comfortable in their own skin. This presence often discourages others from attempting to insult or humiliate them in the first place. Bullies and cruel people tend to target those who seem vulnerable, those who they sense will crumble under attack. Someone who radiates self-love and self-acceptance is simply a less appealing target. This isn't about victim blaming or suggesting that people who are insulted or humiliated somehow brought it on themselves. Cruelty is always the responsibility of the person being cruel. But it is true that self-love can reduce your vulnerability to certain types of social aggression, simply by changing the energy you project into the world. Perhaps most importantly, self-love saves you from insult and humiliation by changing what you value and what you fear. When you don't love yourself, you often desperately crave approval and desperately fear rejection. This makes you vulnerable to anyone who might withhold approval or threaten rejection. You might tolerate disrespect, abuse, or exploitation because you're so afraid of losing the relationship or the approval. You might contort yourself into shapes that don't fit you, trying to be what others want you to be, because you believe that's the only way to be loved or accepted. Self-love breaks this pattern. When you love yourself, you still enjoy approval and connection, but you don't need them in the same desperate way. You're not willing to sacrifice your dignity, your boundaries, or your authentic self to obtain them. This means that threats of rejection or disapproval lose much of their power. Someone can insult you or try to humiliate you, but if the price of their approval is your self-respect, you're willing to walk away. This willingness to walk away, this knowledge that you'll be okay even if this person rejects you, is incredibly liberating. The protection that self-love offers isn't about becoming hard or closed off. It's not about building walls or refusing to let anyone in. In fact, genuine self-love often makes you more open, more vulnerable in healthy ways, more capable of authentic connection. When you're not constantly defending against potential insults or humiliation, when you're not desperately seeking approval, you can actually be more present with others. You can take risks in relationships because you know that even if things don't work out, even if you get hurt, you'll still have yourself. You'll still be okay. This is the ultimate freedom that self-love provides, the freedom to be yourself, to take risks, to fail, to be imperfect, to be human, without the constant fear of judgment and rejection. Insults and humiliation lose their power not because you've become invulnerable, but because you've become your own source of validation and compassion. You've stopped abandoning yourself every time someone else disapproves of you. You've learned to stay with yourself, to support yourself, to love yourself, regardless of what anyone else thinks or says. In the end, self-love saves you from insult and humiliation by changing the fundamental question you're asking. Instead of constantly asking, "Am I good enough? Do they approve of me? Have I failed?" you start asking, "Am I being true to myself? Am I treating myself with kindness? Am I living according to my values?" These questions put you back in the driver's seat of your own life. They make you the authority on your own worth. And from that place of internal authority and self-compassion, the opinions of others, while they might still matter to some degree, can never again have the power to destroy you.